Chapter 65 opened with Jin-Woo browsing the Hunter's auction market on his computer. The market was an online and offline platform where hunters could buy and sell items obtained from raids. Thousands of Korean hunters frequented the site to purchase and sell equipment, as high-quality gear could mean the difference between life and death in the dangerous world of hunting. Jinwoo knew that D-rank and E-rank hunters typically couldn't afford the items sold here due to their limited income compared to higher-ranked hunters. However, they could obtain equipment by joining strike squads that conducted regular raids, like the one Jinwoo had been a part of. All equipment used by hunters was infused with magic, which significantly increased the value of even the most ordinary-looking weapons. Jinwoo remembered Mr. Kim telling him he had bought his sword for 3 million won. C-rank hunters and above generally had higher incomes and could afford to purchase gear to protect themselves and improve their hunting efficiency. As a result, high-ranking hunters' equipment often cost millions, even billions of won. It was practically impossible to buy high-quality equipment with personal funds. Jinwoo realized that despite his savings, it wasn't enough to buy everything he needed. He wanted to purchase better equipment to help him when he returned to the Demon Castle, especially since the castle was filled with fire and he needed protection from the flames. He checked his system shop but couldn't find the exact items he was looking for. Jinwoo considered selling the Orb of Avarice to fund his purchases. He thought he could sell it for a high price since items that increased strength by 20% or more were highly sought after, and the orb doubled magic damage. However, he couldn't sell it on the black market as it was illegal. The problem was, how could he openly sell such a powerful item without raising suspicions? Especially as an E-rank hunter, people would be even more curious. He knew it would take a long time to obtain his S-rank hunter license. If only he had a record of entering an A-rank gate, it would help alleviate suspicions. As an E-rank, it would be difficult to join a high-rank raid team. Suddenly, Jinwoo saw a recruitment post for low-rank hunters. The scene shifted to the Hunters Association office where Woo Jinchul presented Chairman Go Gun-hee's request to investigate Sung Jin-Woo. The chairman remarked that Jinwoo looked young in his picture, as it was taken 4 years ago. Woo Jinchul replied that based on his records, Jinwoo was considered the weakest E-rank hunter in the past 4 years. His missions were often suicide missions, leading the chairman to suspect that he might be a false ranker. Woo Jinchul argued that the testimonies of Jinwoo's raid teammates supported his genuine rank. The chairman suggested that Jinwoo's reawakening might not have been a recent event. Woo Jinchul countered that if that were true, Jinwoo wouldn't have risked his teammates' lives in the double dungeon. He had narrowly escaped death multiple times, but never gave up, driven by the need to support his sick mother. The chairman realized that hunters like Sung Jinwoo were rare in this era. After losing his father, Jinwoo had taken care of his younger sibling and ailing mother. Woo Jinchul then revealed that Jinwoo had joined a raid team, surprising the chairman. He mentioned that Jinwoo had joined the Hunters Guild, leading the chairman to wonder if Jinwoo had been swayed by a lucrative offer. Woo Jinchul clarified that Jinwoo had joined the mining team, not the strike squad. The chairman was stunned by this revelation. The scene shifted to an A-rank dungeon gate where the mining team's supervisor questioned Sung Jinwoo about his experience. Jinwoo admitted he was a fighter and had no mining experience. Another miner reassured him that many hunters like him joined the mining team and told him not to worry. Jinwoo realized that high-ranking dungeons were so vast that even strike squads couldn't cover everything. Therefore, tasks were divided among teams. The strike squad fought magic beasts, the mining team extracted crystals, and the hauling team collected beast corpses. Jinwoo understood that despite having many team members, machines couldn't operate inside the dungeon, so they had to rely on old-fashioned tools like magic-infused pickaxes. As Jinwoo gazed at the A-rank dungeon gate, he felt excited to finally see the inside. He was glad to be part of this team. The scene shifted to the inside of the A-rank dungeon, where the Hunters Guild strike squad was already deep inside. The dungeon was incredibly large. Guildmaster Choi Jong-in warned his team that the dungeon was vast, and they might take a long time. As they progressed, they encountered large magic beasts. The Guildmaster unleashed a powerful magic spell that created a massive explosion, but he warned his team to be ready for a counterattack. The tank successfully blocked the returning blast. The Guildmaster explained that he had held back to preserve the beast corpses for future use. His team was impressed by his skills. The Guildmaster then instructed a member with a sensitive sense of smell to escort him out, warning him to be cautious of burnt smells. Outside the dungeon, the mining team was waiting. They were impatient due to the delay. A staff member explained that the strike squad was ensuring their safety. The chapter ended as the strike squad emerged. Jinwoo observed the powerful hunters, including their guild master, Choi Jong-in. and the formidable-looking female hunter who was the vice guild master. Chapter 66 opened with a bustling scene as guild employees greeted the returning Strike Squad members from their recent raid. The Elite Strike Squad, a prestigious unit known for their prowess, marched out of the dungeon, led by the guild master himself, Choi Jong-in, an S-rank mage hunter. Among the crowd, Jinwoo observed with a keen gaze. His eyes scanned the ranks of the renowned hunters, quickly settling on the familiar figure of Choi Jong-in. Recognizing the potential for complications if Choi Jong-in noticed him, Jinwoo lowered his hard hat to conceal his identity. Fortunately, the uniform of the excavation team allowed him to blend in seamlessly. As Jinwoo observed the elite squad, his attention was suddenly drawn to a woman emerging from the gate. Her striking presence caught Jinwoo off guard. Despite her unassuming demeanor, her immense power and aura were undeniable. Recognizing her as Hae-In, the only female S-rank hunter in South Korea, Jinwoo was impressed. Her rare public appearances had made her a less familiar face, but her presence spoke volumes. Hae-In's gaze briefly flickered in Jinwoo's direction. Although Jinwoo had tried to remain unobtrusive, her enhanced perception made her aware of a strong presence. Confused, she dismissed the sensation as a misjudgment, likely due to her heightened senses detecting an unusual scent. Relieved that Hae-In did not pursue the source of her confusion, Jinwoo observed her retreating figure. He then turned his focus back to his own task. Yoon-suk, the foreman, rallied the team to begin their work. Jinwoo followed the excavation team into the A-rank dungeon, intrigued by the new environment. As Jinwoo entered the dungeon, he was struck by the ominous wind and powerful magic waves emanating from the depths. His hunter instincts were stirred, and he felt an exhilaration at the thought of encountering the dungeon's boss. His thoughts were interrupted when Lee Seong-gu, a fellow team member, brusquely bumped into him. The unexpected encounter revealed Seong-gu's frustration as he struggled to comprehend Jinwoo's unyielding stance. Jinwoo's indifferent response and piercing gaze startled Seong-gu, causing him to retreat in confusion. Jinwoo brushed off the encounter with Seong-gu and continued to adapt to his new role. He was acutely aware of his own heightened perception and the intensity of the boss's magic power. As the team set to work, Jinwoo marveled at the scale of the dungeon's interior and the ongoing excavation efforts. His thoughts wandered to the possibility of utilizing his shadow soldiers for such tasks, imagining how efficient they could be in handling high-rank dungeons. His reflections were interrupted by the foreman's casual remarks about the dungeon's procedures and potential dangers. Despite the foreman's calm demeanor, Jinwoo could not ignore the palpable magic power resonating from the boss's lair. After this, Jinwoo began working. His co-workers were shocked and couldn't believe it was Jinwoo's first time as a miner, given his strength and skill. One of them even asked if he was really an E-rank hunter. The supervisor remarked that Jinwoo was born to be a miner. While the excavation team took a break for lunch, Jinwoo seized the opportunity to venture further into the dungeon. His curiosity and excitement drove him to explore the boss's lair, where he finally encountered the Colossal, one-eyed magic beast. Jinwoo's heart raced with anticipation at the sight of the giant-type magic beast, a rare and formidable opponent. As Jinwoo contemplated the challenge ahead and the potential rewards, his resolve was tested by the appearance of his weapons. Despite knowing it was unwise to engage, his desire to test his own strength prevailed. Just as he was about to make a decision, a sharp voice interrupted him, questioning his presence in the boss's lair. Chapter 67 started as Jinwoo's heart sank as he heard a sharp voice from behind him. "What do you think you're doing there?" The unexpected question made Jinwoo's pulse quicken. He had been so absorbed in observing the dungeon boss that he had failed to notice the approaching presence of the voice's owner. Realizing he had been caught, he felt a wave of embarrassment wash over him. As the owner of the voice approached, Jinwoo exhaled softly, trying to regain his composure. The voice repeated, "I asked what you were doing." Jinwoo turned to face the speaker, forcing a sheepish grin. "I got lost and ended up here by mistake." The woman scrutinized Jinwoo. Hae-In's eyes darted to Jinwoo's hands, searching for any weapons but finding none. Confused because she had initially thought he was holding a dagger, she then noticed his attire. "Are you part of the excavation team?" she inquired. Seemingly reassured by his innocent appearance, Hae-In decided to focus on ensuring his safety. Please leave. If you accidentally trigger the boss, it could endanger everyone in the dungeon. Jinwoo apologized. As he walked past her, a curious thought crossed Hae-In's mind, prompting her to call out, excuse me. Jinwoo turned back, slightly uneasy. Yes? Could you turn this way for a moment? Hae-In asked, her tone as neutral as possible. Jinwoo complied, though confusion was evident on his face. Hae-In moved closer, her curiosity piqued. Removing her handkerchief, she inhaled deeply, her eyes widening in surprise. There was no foul stench emanating from Jinwoo. In fact, he smelled pleasantly clean. Jinwoo was baffled by her behavior. Is there a problem? He asked. Hae-In was taken aback by Jinwoo's lack of the usual hunter's odor. Are you really a hunter? She asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. Jinwoo, sensing her doubt, produced his hunter's license and handed it to her. Hae-In compared the photo with Jinwoo's face, noting his E rank status. She thought that maybe the absence of a foul smell was due to his low rank. May I leave now? Jinwoo asked politely, reclaiming his license as Hae-In handed it back. Hae-In, still processing the anomaly, couldn't come up with anything more to say. Just be careful as you head back. It's easy to get lost in here, she finally advised. Jinwoo nodded in acknowledgement and headed back towards the excavation site. Jinwoo's pleasant odor was unlike anything she had experienced with other hunters. While leaving, the foreman told Jinwoo how fortunate he was to have run into Hunter Cha Hae-In, calling it a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Another hunter mentioned that Hunter Cha has the ability to detect a specific scent emitted by hunters, which he finds extremely repulsive. It was added that Hunter Cha has a unique condition. Jinwoo's thoughts drifted back to his encounter with Hae-In. He was intrigued by her reaction and the peculiar nature of his own scent. Jinwoo considered that perhaps, because he was a player and not a hunter, he lacked the distinctive scent that hunters have. He speculated that this might be why Hae-In didn't seem to detect any scent from him. Later, Jinwoo received his paycheck since the excavation team had finished their work early. He was met with praise from his colleagues and smiled at their compliments, pleased with his performance and the chance to witness an A-rank dungeon boss up close. The foreman told Jinwoo that he was born to be a miner, and then asked if Jinwoo would be interested in working under him. He also mentioned that the pay was good. Jinwoo replied that he appreciated the offer but had other commitments. The foreman then asked if Jinwoo would be available tomorrow. Surprised, Jinwoo inquired if the Hunters Guild was planning another raid the next day. The foreman confirmed that they were indeed going on another raid, with another A-rank gate. However, it would be Strike Squad B attending, not Strike Squad A. The foreman added that the Hunters Guild was the only guild in Korea with 2 strike squads. Jinwoo agreed to join them again the next day. The foreman was pleased and jokingly said that since Jinwoo worked 5 times faster, his pay should be doubled. The scene shifts to a Korean restaurant where Jin-Ho is having dinner with his cousin, Soo-hyun. Soo-hyun is complaining to Jin-Ho that he came all the way here just to talk and eat pork belly in a Korean restaurant. Jin-Ho, who is somewhat drunk, responds that there is nothing wrong with a Korean restaurant and that it is a sacred place for him and Jinwoo. Soo-hyun then asks why Jinwoo called him. Jin-Ho explains that he had already spoken to his father, and everything turned out fine. This leads Soo-hyun to ask if Jin-Ho is going to become a guild master. Jin-Ho replies that he needs Jinwoo's help to achieve that. Soo-hyun wonders who this Jinwoo is that Jin-Ho keeps mentioning. Just then, Jin-Ho, who is now crying, shows his phone, revealing that he can't contact Jinwoo. Soo-hyun asks if there is a relationship between Jin-Ho and Jinwoo. Suddenly, Jin-Ho noticed a news report about A-list actor Lee Min-sung on the TV. Min-sung appeared modest while speaking to reporters, but Soo-hyun was unimpressed. She criticized Min-sung for pretending to be humble and dragging out his A-rank status for publicity. Soo-hyun, who had a low opinion of Min-sung, felt frustrated by his media manipulation and persistent attempts to impress her. She found his narcissism, exacerbated by his A-rank status, particularly irritating and struggled to shake off her annoyance. Soo-hyun, impatient with Jin-Ho, took his phone and called Jinwoo. She was frustrated that Jin-Ho only had a brief message and was in a rush. In shock, Jinwoo answered. Jin-Ho asked why Jinwoo had been slow to contact him. Explained he had been busy with dungeon visits. Jinwoo then asked how Jin-Ho's conversation with his father went. Jin-Ho said he would explain in person and asked if he could visit the next day. Jinwoo agreed to a late-night visit, and Jin-Ho confirmed that would work. Meanwhile, Hae-In struggled to sleep that night, her mind preoccupied with Jinwoo. His absence of the usual hunter's stench had left her unsettled. Driven by curiosity, Hae-In contacted Myunki Jo, the director of the hunter's recruitment team. Chapter 68 begins with Hunter Hae-In calling Myunki Jo late at night. Myunki Jo asks why Hunter Hae-In is calling at such an hour and what she needs. Hae-In inquires if Myunki Jo has any information about a miner named Sung Jinwoo, as she finds it hard to believe that Jinwoo ended up in the boss's lair. Hae-In suspects that Jinwoo might be a spy from another guild and cannot get Jinwoo out of his mind. Myunki Jo asks if Hae-In is referring to the E-rank hunter from the Hunters Association. Hae-In asks if Myunki Jo knows him. Myunki Jo explains that Guildmaster Choi Jong-in had requested information about Sung Jinwoo the day before. Hae-In is surprised by this and asks if Myunki Jo knows why the Guildmaster made the request. Myunki Jo apologizes and says he doesn't know. He adds that he will do everything he can to get the information because the association has classified the file. Hae-In wonders why Guildmaster Choi Jong-in is interested in Jinwoo's file, and why the association is keeping it hidden, given that Jinwoo is only an E-rank hunter. Hae-In ends the call, thinking to himself, I think I'm onto something here. In the following scenes, Hae-In is seen lying in bed, unable to sleep, still thinking about Jinwoo and why he is the only exception among hunters without a foul smell. She notes that Jinwoo is the first one who smells nice. The scene shifts to the next day, where Jinwoo is once again participating in a dungeon raid with the Hunters Guild. He is reminded of his previous raid team when he sees his fellow miners, which makes him smile. He is warmly greeted by his old teammates and reflects on how he had forgotten this feeling and how it brings back many memories. Suddenly, a hunter from Strike Squad B approaches, looking for a miner to carry their bags since the original person assigned for this task did not show up. The miners are puzzled and disappointed, questioning why they are being asked when the hauling team, who are stronger, could do the job. The leader of the hauling team explains that they worked non-stop for 3 hours yesterday and skipped dinner because the mining team finished early, so they can't spare anyone else. The foreman admits that they finished early because of Sung Jinwoo. The hunter asks again if anyone is willing to join, mentioning a bonus for anyone who volunteers due to the risk involved. None of the miners are willing to risk their lives for a small amount of money. The foreman tells the hunter, Sun Ki-hoon, that they are uncomfortable entering a B-rank dungeon due to their low ranking. They know that the porter's role is only to carry bags, but it is still a significant risk. Ki-hoon repeatedly asks if anyone is interested. Suddenly, Jinwoo raises his hand and volunteers to join as a porter. Everyone is shocked, and his fellow miners express their concerns about the danger, mentioning the high-ranking beasts inside the dungeon. They urge Jinwoo not to trade his safety for a small amount of money. Jinwoo replies that he will be okay because he is not faint-hearted. However, he thinks to himself that this is an opportunity to observe another strike squad, especially since they will be raiding in a dungeon. One of the larger hunters comments that it seems Jinwoo has raised his hand without knowing what he is getting into, noting that Jinwoo is new and only an E-rank. He advises Ki-hoon to find someone else. Ki-hoon responds that it is fine. He'll do it. The hunter introduces himself as Sun Ki-hoon, the leader of the strike squad, and shakes Jinwoo's hand. As the strike squad enters the dungeon gate, Ki-hoon asks if Jinwoo is having trouble with the bags. Jinwoo says he is fine, surprising Ki-hoon as he doesn't seem to be struggling. Upon seeing the gate, Jinwoo notices it is larger than the gate from yesterday. Ki-hoon tells Jinwoo that while the gate is larger today, the monster levels are lower compared to yesterday. He adds that if the gate were dangerous, it would not be entrusted to a second-tier squad. While standing at the gate, Jinwoo observes the hunters, noting that they are no different from the hunters from yesterday, except that there are no S-rank hunters among them. As the second-tier strike squad begins to enter the dungeon, Jinwoo, who is carrying their bags, observes that the squad is strong with various roles like fighters, tanks, and healers. As they proceed through the gate, Jinwoo feels a strange sensation similar to the one he felt when entering the red gate previously. He thinks it might just be his imagination and decides not to worry since he is not part of the strike squad. The system indicates that Jinwoo has entered the dungeon. Once inside, a female hunter approaches Jinwoo and tells him not to worry, as not only Ki-hoon but everyone in their squad is strong. Jinwoo realizes that the woman is an A-rank healer and thinks about his former squad member, Joo-hee. He wonders if he could join a strike squad like this if he overcame his trauma. Based on his observation, Jinwoo notes that the strike squad consists of 6 B-rank hunters who are as strong as A-rank hunters. The woman reassures him that they will handle the fighting, and as long as he sticks with them, nothing bad will happen. She also mentions a saying, "If mages are attacked, it is the tank's fault. If healers are attacked, it is the strike squad's fault. But if porters are attacked, it is the guild's fault." The scene shifts to Ki-hoon, who is feeling nervous as it is his first time leading a strike squad since joining the Hunters Guild. He hopes that if their raid is successful, he will officially become the leader of Group B. Suddenly, there is a rustling noise that startles everyone, and all the hunters quickly shift into attack mode, leaving Jinwoo amazed by their reaction. The chapter ends with Ki-hoon wondering what kind of monsters they are dealing with. Chapter 69 begins with the strike squad suddenly attacked by mysterious dungeon monsters, which turn out to be dungeon jackals. As the squad realizes this, they see the jackals closing in, their eyes fierce and their movements quick. One armored hunter charges at 2 of the dungeon jackals, swiftly stabbing one while blocking with his shield against the other. Ki-hoon, on the other hand, slashes at another jackal with his sword, his eyes widening in shock as he notices there are many more. Other members of the strike squad join the fight. One hunter leaps high and executes a downward slash, decapitating a jackal. The mages don't hold back either. One mage uses her magic to levitate rocks, urging the hunters to get down as she directs the stones toward the jackals, quickly eliminating them. Ki-hoon and another hunter wonder why there are dungeon jackals in an A-rank dungeon. Jinwoo asks a female hunter if it isn't common to see jackals in A-rank dungeons. She replies that it isn't unusual, but what's strange is that jackals are typically C-rank beasts. They're too weak to survive in an A-rank dungeon because they sit at the bottom of the food chain, often becoming prey for stronger beasts. This raises questions about their survival, especially since there are no other beasts around for the jackals to hunt. Suddenly, the female hunter notices leash marks on the jackals. Jinwoo concludes that these are not ordinary jackals. They have been domesticated by someone. Hearing this, Ki-hoon considers the possibility that someone intentionally left them behind to be used as hunting dogs. However, Jinwoo thinks there may be a beast inside the dungeon that released the jackals to hunt. He realizes that if that's the case, they're up against a much more intelligent enemy than ordinary dungeon monsters. Just then, they hear large footsteps, prompting Jinwoo to look around. Ki-hoon, startled, gasps, "Oh my god," as they are confronted by an army of high orcs. One high orc lets out a powerful roar and, with a swift motion, throws a spear at the strike squad leader. The speed and force of the throw catch Ki-hoon off guard. He manages to deflect the spear just in time, but he is shocked to find that the impact nearly shatters his shield. In the chaos, another orc armed with an axe charges at Ki-hoon, who again successfully deflects the attack with his shield. The tank attempts to provoke the high orcs, but it proves ineffective. One high orc leaps forward, targeting the mages instead, indicating that these high orcs are smarter than typical dungeon monsters. One mage shouts that they won't surrender easily, casting a fire spell from his lantern that hits an orc, but it does little to deter the beast, as they seem resistant to magic. Another mage assists by summoning a binding spell that restrains one high orc. However, she warns that the high orc is too strong, and she can only hold it for 5 seconds. Another mage calls out that it's enough time, summoning a fire beast as powerful as an A-rank hunter to engage the high orc. Unfortunately, once he summons the beast, he can no longer use any other spells, and if they don't defeat the high orcs quickly, he risks running out of mana. One hunter gets struck in the shoulder by an axe from a high orc, but he quickly recovers thanks to the healer. He urges the tanks to protect the defense line, but they explain that their provocation skills aren't working on the high orcs. Meanwhile, another hunter struggles with an orc, holding it at bay. Ki-hoon suddenly shouts that they are outnumbered and will be at a disadvantage if they get surrounded. He insists they need to split into 3 groups. As he deflects an attack from a high orc, he wonders why, even in an A-rank dungeon, he did not expect to encounter nearly 20 high orcs at once. According to the assessment, this dungeon shouldn't have been difficult based on the association's evaluation. He added that high orcs are a different breed from regular orcs. They are among the strongest, equivalent to A-rank hunters. The battle quickly turns into a dire situation. 22 high orcs against 17 hunters. Not only are they outnumbered, but they also have a disadvantage in rank since their B-rank companions cannot hope to match the strength of these beasts. Although A-rank hunters are stronger than the high orcs, the loss of their B-rank hunters would be catastrophic, leading Ki-hoon to think, "Please don't die, everyone." In the heat of battle, one hunter loses an arm to an orc. A bespectacled mage faces the orc to protect the wounded companion, casting a spell that manifests serpentine magic from the ground, coiling around the high orc. While the healer treats the hunter who lost his arm, she casts a spell to restore it. But unexpectedly, the magic spell from the mage is not enough to stop the high orcs. The mage shouts that the high orc is still alive as it lunges at the healer, who just closes her eyes in fear. Just then, Jinwoo sets down his bag and uses stealth. The female healer watches in shock as the high orc levitates, seemingly caught in a chokehold. Suddenly, the orc's body is violently torn apart in front of her, leaving her bewildered by what is happening. Chapter 70 begins with the female healer still wondering what is happening when suddenly, the high orc in front of her gets torn apart. Meanwhile, Ki-hoon is fighting another high orc and is puzzled as to why the battle seems to be getting easier and why the high orcs appear to be weakening. Unbeknownst to them, Jinwoo is using his stealth to avoid being detected while systematically slashing at the high orcs to weaken them. Jinwoo thinks he needs to weaken the high orcs without being noticed by the other hunters. However, it's inevitable that some orcs notice him. He stabs one high orc in the neck, warning him that he will be in a tough spot if he makes any foolish moves. At that moment, another hunter dashes behind the orc and delivers a powerful punch. The female hunter is thrilled to see the orc defeated, unaware that Jinwoo had already weakened it. Meanwhile, Jinwoo is looking at his hands, which are splattered with blood. He thinks about how Ki-hoon and the other hunters with him are elite members of the best hunter guild in the country. He feels uneasy because the high orcs they are facing are extremely strong, and they nearly killed the female healer just moments ago. He knows he can't afford to wait for someone to die. Suddenly, Jinwoo's system notification pops up. He has leveled up. He realizes he can level up simply by helping the raid team. He considers that if he defeats the high orcs alone, he might level up again. However, the dungeon entry permit was purchased by the Hunters Guild for a significant amount, and as an outsider, he cannot interfere. Thus, he thinks this is all he can do for now. The scene shifts to the other hunters, who are wondering if they already win as they looking at defeated high orcs. Ki-hoon asks if anyone was injured, and he is told that as long as they can still breathe, the healer can treat them. Meanwhile, two hunters discuss how they fought an army of high orcs and marvel at their miracle of having no casualties. A female mage hunter notices Jinwoo's actions and remarks that the porter must think they are all fools. It's impossible for her not to have noticed, as she is a magic caster and saw Jinwoo using a camouflage skill. The female healer tells Ki-hoon that she noticed their high orc opponents being torn apart midair. Ki-hoon wonders if this means they have someone casting spells with them. Ki-hoon turns to Gina, a mage, and asks if it was her. She denies it, stating she doesn't have the ability to do that. She adds that even using her telekinesis to stop the movement of the orcs for a few seconds is difficult for her, and they have no mages capable of casting curses since their strike squad mainly consists of fire-type hunters and lacks assassin-type hunters. Another female hunter, who wears glasses, suggests that perhaps an outsider did this. Meanwhile, Jinwoo is sweating in a corner, worried he might be discovered. Fortunately, the female mage thinks there must be a reason for him hiding his identity. A male mage expresses gratitude that their battle is over, fearing he might faint from exhaustion if he continued using his summoned beast. Ki-hoon acknowledges everyone's points, noting that he also observed the high orcs behaving strangely during the second half of the battle, and finds it odd that they defeated them without any losses. A hunter asks if they should continue, and whispers ripple among the other hunters as they ponder the dangers of the dungeon, unsure if there are stronger beasts inside. The tank hunter taps Ki-hoon on the shoulder, stating they need to call the vice guild master or guild master because their squad could be in danger if they continue. Although he knows that Ki-hoon does not want to pull out the squad since it's his first time leading. In his mind, Ki-hoon thinks that if they complete the raid, he will become the leader of the strike squad. He feels there's no second chance and clenches his fists in thought. Jinwoo also contemplates the decision, knowing each hunter wants to clear the dungeon. Suddenly, Ki-hoon speaks up, deciding they should retreat for now. The other hunters feel relieved at this decision, knowing how dangerous the dungeon can be. "I'm not an idiot," Ki-hoon asserts, and they agree to leave. As they walk toward the dungeon gate to exit, they suddenly stop, shocked by what they see. The dungeon gate is sealed with an advanced spell. They wonder why it is blocked now when it was fine when they entered. Ki-hoon asks if the mages can remove it. One mage responds that it might be possible, but it would take time. The mage suspects that there might be other beasts in the dungeon capable of casting advanced spells, and they're glad to be leaving, knowing they lack the capability to raid the dungeon. Suddenly, the hunters feel a powerful surge of energy from within the dungeon, prompting them to wonder if the dungeon boss is responsible. The mages decide they need to lift the barrier quickly, and 3 mages work together to do so. Meanwhile, Jinwoo reflects that the mana waves from the barrier are sensed by the hunters, who usually do not feel such waves, indicating that this dungeon is on another level. He questions why those outside cannot detect the strong mana waves, suspecting the boss might be hiding its presence. As the mages struggle to lift the barrier, they suddenly feel a curse spell that causes them to vomit blood due to its intensity. The tank hunter looks into the dungeon and notices Ki-hoon, who appears terrified, hearing many large footsteps coming from within the dungeons. Chapter 71 began with Ki-hoon hearing heavy footsteps coming from the dungeon, and he soon discerned numerous red eyes in front of him. Other hunters noticed this as well, remarking that they had barely managed to defeat just over 20 High Orcs. However, what stood before them now were more than 50 High Orcs. One High Orc approached Ki-hoon and stared him directly in the face. His fellow hunters felt uneasy, but Ki-hoon calmly instructed them to stand down, explaining that fighting now would only lead to unnecessary deaths. Ki-hoon clenched his trembling fist, wishing that Mr. Choi or Ms. Cha were with them at that moment. Suddenly, the orc shouted at Ki-hoon in its language, prompting a chorus of roars from the many orcs behind it. Then, without warning, the orc's eyes turned white as if something had taken control of it. It began to speak in the human tongue, introducing itself as Kargalgan, expressing a desire to meet the hunters. The other hunters were taken aback, surprised that the orc could speak their language. A mage hunter interjected, stating that the orc was merely a puppet, with someone else speaking through it. Ki-hoon then questioned the orc, asking if it had blocked the cave entrance. The orc confirmed that it was indeed the almighty shaman of the proud orcs and added that its magical barrier could not easily be destroyed by humans. Ki-hoon pressed further, inquiring if there were beasts within the cave stronger than Kargalgan. The orc challenged Ki-hoon, asking who would dare stand against it and offering Ki-hoon a choice: to die at the hands of its soldiers, or to follow them into the dungeon. Ki-hoon decided they would join the orcs, shocking the other hunters, who felt powerless in the face of so many High Orcs. Jinwoo contemplated the situation, considering that aside from the boss, many more High Orcs were likely waiting in the boss's lair, significantly diminishing their chances of victory. He speculated whether Ki-hoon intended to negotiate with the boss to find a way out of the dungeon. In Ki-hoon's mind, he realized they had little choice, and this was their best option in the current circumstance. He suddenly called out to Jinwoo, explaining that they planned to launch a surprise attack on the boss once they spotted it. He believed that whether they succeeded or failed, the boss would not be able to maintain the magical barrier blocking their exit for long. While distracting the boss, he could seize the opportunity to escape and call for help from the main strike squad. But the battle might be over before the backup arrives, Jinwoo replied. He questioned whether Ki-hoon was really willing to risk everyone's lives to take down the boss. Ki-hoon responded that their ultimate goal was to close the gate and escape the dungeon alive, emphasizing that many people had invested in them to achieve this. Meanwhile, a female healer approached Jinwoo, requesting a favor. She handed him a will, asking that if he managed to escape, he delivers it to her family. Another hunter spoke up, stating that they would do their best, as they had trained, and asked Jinwoo to ensure he made it out alive. Jinwoo agreed to hold onto the will temporarily, but insisted he had no right to deliver it. The scene shifted outside the dungeon, where Hunter Hae-In had arrived. Upon seeing the gate, she sensed that the intensity of the mana waves indicated that the battle inside was still ongoing. The miners outside wondered why Hunter Hae-In was there. In her thoughts, Hae-In was searching for someone, suspecting that they might have quit the mining team. The foreman of the miners asked her why she was there on her day off, to which Hae-In inquired if a hunter named Sung Jinwoo was working that day. The foreman informed her that Jinwoo had entered the gate with the strike squad to fill the porter position. Hae-In was taken aback. She couldn't believe an E-rank would willingly enter an A-rank gate as a porter. She recalled seeing him the previous day in front of the boss lair, armed, and sensed something was off. Deciding to enter the gate, Hae-In startled the foreman, who asked if there was an accident that required reinforcements. Hae-In assured him it was a personal matter and not to worry. Before entering, Hae-In realized she had no weapon and asked the foreman if there was anything she could borrow. He instructed a team member to fetch equipment, but when Hae-In saw it was just a pickaxe, she asked if there were any swords or spears available. The foreman scratched his head and explained that they were a mining team, and that was all they had. Hae-In returned the pickaxe, stating she would go in unarmed. Just as she turned to leave, the foreman asked if she was sure about entering without a weapon. Embarrassed and trembling, Hae-In felt uncomfortable without one. She bowed her head, retrieved the pickaxe, and hurried toward the dungeon. The scene shifted to the inside of the dungeon, where the strike squad, accompanied by the High Orcs, approached the boss's lair. As they entered, they were met with a staggering number of orcs, far exceeding the foes they had encountered before. In the center of the lair, the dungeon boss sat on an imposing throne, exuding a powerful aura. Flanking the throne were 4 formidable orc guards, their muscles taut and weapons at the ready, clearly indicating their readiness for battle. Suddenly, the boss spoke, his voice echoing through the chamber as he welcomed the humans with an air of authority. Chapter 72 began with the strike team joining the orcs on their way to the boss lair, where the dungeon boss, Kargalgan, awaited them, surrounded by a large number of high orcs encircling the strike squad. Ki-hoon thought that with so many high orcs present, they could easily destroy a city if the highest-ranking hunter didn't show up to stop them. He realized they needed to defeat the boss, but the intimidating presence of the guards made him wonder if they could even get past them to reach the boss. Meanwhile, the other hunters were waiting for Ki-hoon's signal to attack the shaman. Suddenly, Kargalgan asked the hunters if they were afraid, unleashing a powerful wave of magic that created a strong shockwave. The sheer force of the magic nearly overwhelmed the hunters, making them question how they could possibly fight such a powerful boss and why his magic was so strong. One mage hunter thought to himself that compared to Kargalgan, he was merely a third-rate magician. Despite his fear, Ki-hoon mustered the courage to ask why they had been brought here if Kargalgan high orcs could kill them on the spot. Kargalgan quickly replied that it was just for fun and that he would kill them one by one to entertain his soldiers. Ki-hoon was left stunned by this revelation. Then, a loud roar erupted from Kargalgan's soldiers. However, Kargalgan pointed out that there was a strange being among their group. Hearing that they were merely entertainment and not considered opponents made Ki-hoon furious. He shouted, giving the signal to attack the boss, charging toward Kargalgan. Unfortunately, his companions were too paralyzed by fear to follow, leaving Ki-hoon to charge alone. Still, he bravely pressed on. Suddenly, Kargalgan cast a spell, Hymn of Protection, summoning a large shield that blocked Ki-hoon's sword. The impact knocked Ki-hoon to the ground. Kargalgan mocked him, calling him a foolish human, and then used levitation to lift Ki-hoon off the ground, followed by gravity acceleration, slamming him down headfirst and creating a massive crash. After that, Kargalgan levitated Ki-hoon again, repeatedly slamming him against the floor and ceiling. The other hunters could only watch helplessly as tears welled in their eyes, unable to save him. When Kargalgan finally stopped the spell, Ki-hoon's battered body fell to the ground once more, but suddenly, he vanished, shocking the dungeon boss. It was Jinwoo who had transferred Ki-hoon to a safe place. Jinwoo said that he knew this dungeon belonged to the Hunters Guild and that he should not interfere. However, he noticed that the High Orcs were about to kill his entire squad. Jinwoo asked Ki-hoon if he could have permission to eliminate all the beasts in the dungeon. As they spoke, an orc guard ordered by Kargalgan charged at them. Even without looking, Jinwoo sensed the orc's attack and used Dominator's Touch to levitate it, slamming it into the ceiling and floor repeatedly, mimicking what Kargalgan had done to Ki-hoon. Ki-hoon, barely able to move, was astonished and shocked by Jinwoo's strength. Jinwoo then asked Ki-hoon again if he had permission to kill all the beasts in the dungeon. With tears in his eyes, Ki-hoon pleaded, "Please, I beg you," while one orc guard remained stuck to the ceiling due to Jinwoo's actions. The dungeon boss remarked on how interesting Jinwoo was for a human, but questioned how long his little trick would work on them. He unleashed a powerful magic aura that reached Jinwoo. Jinwoo noted that it was the first time he felt such a strong energy. Kargalgan arrogantly stated that Jinwoo shouldn't be surprised. Jinwoo then replied, "Sorry, "But this is a terrible matchup for you." "Not for me," and suddenly summoned his shadows. The hunters watched in shock as Jinwoo's shadows, led by Iron, Igris, and Tank, began to emerge. The chapter ended with Jinwoo's shadow army ready to confront Kargalgan and his orcs. Chapter 73 began with a scene outside the dungeon, where a car arrived carrying hunters from the surveillance team, including Woo Jin-Chul. He approached the front of the gate, still wondering why Jinwoo had applied as a miner in the Hunters Guild for not just one day, but for 2 consecutive days. In Woo Jin-Chul's mind, Jinwoo was undeniably an S rank, and he needed to be more careful with his actions. Meanwhile, the foreman of the miners questioned why the surveillance team agents were there. Jin-Chul replied that they had heard Mr. Sung Jinwoo had joined the mining team and wanted to know where he was at that moment. The foreman asked if there was something wrong with Jinwoo. One miner, recalling an encounter with Jinwoo in the dungeon, stated that he couldn't be mistaken in his suspicion. If Jinwoo wasn't a hunter, he was certainly a killer, because when he looked into Jinwoo's eyes, he saw the devil. The miner still seemed shaken from his encounter, saying he felt chills just thinking about it. Jin-Chul dismissed this, and the foreman explained that Jinwoo was inside the dungeon because the porter of the strike squad had not shown up. Jinwoo had volunteered to cover his position. Jin-Chul thought that Sung Jinwoo was peculiar because he had first been a miner, and now he was a porter. The foreman asked why they were looking for Jinwoo, as Hunter Cha had also entered the dungeon to find him. Jin-Chul was taken aback by this information. Meanwhile, the other miner still insisted that he knew Jinwoo was capable of committing a crime. Jin-Chul replied that they would find out tomorrow since it would be in the news. Another miner remarked, "See, there was something off about him," while others defended Jinwoo, saying he was a great worker. After that, as Woo Jin-Chul was about to enter the dungeon, he suddenly felt a powerful, malicious energy emanating from it. He thought it was impossible, and in a split second, it felt like his body would be ripped to pieces. One of his companions asked if he felt it too. When they measured the dungeon's strength with a manometer, they were shocked to find it was extremely high, an A-rank gate at its absolute highest level. They realized the association had likely miscalculated the mana level of the gate. Woo Jin-Chul immediately thought that if the strike squad be entered, a significant problem could arise. 2 S ranks had already gone inside, so things should be okay, but they needed to enter to be sure. The scene shifted to inside the dungeon, where Hunter Cha Hae-In was wondering how the strike squad B had managed to kill so many high orcs. Suddenly, she also sensed a strong, malicious energy coming from within. She decided she had to enter quickly because if the mana waves were coming from a boss, it was possible that none of the strike squad would survive. The scene moved to the boss lair, where Jinwoo summoned his shadow army. When Kargalgan saw this, he asked what Jinwoo's plan was, as his army was significantly outnumbered compared to Kargalgan's high orcs. Jinwoo simply smiled and said that Kargalgan would regret underestimating him and his shadows. Jinwoo activated the skill Monarch's Domain, causing a shadow to circle his army. The effect of this skill was that shadow soldiers fighting within the summoner's shadow would receive a 50% stat increase. This skill was acquired by Jinwoo in the Demon Castle. Then suddenly the color of Jinwoo's shadow army changed after using the skill. The 2 mage hunters were puzzled by what was happening. The male hunter remarked that even as a mage hunter, he couldn't summon more than 2 beasts, while the female hunter wondered how a human could wield dark magic. Kargalgan then commanded his subordinates to attack. Iron used the skill Shout of Provocation, but due to the high level of the orcs, it had no effect. Frustrated, Iron just smashed them with his axe. Meanwhile, Igris raised his sword, quickly unleashing numerous slashes against the charging orcs, defeating a group in an instant. The other orcs targeted Jinwoo, who swiftly slashed at the high orcs with his dagger. One orc charged at him, but he skillfully evaded it and countered with a quick slash. The other hunters were amazed, noting that his fighting style resembled that of their Vice Guild master. They also wondered why such a strong hunter had volunteered for a porter position. Jinwoo considered that aside from Igris, Iron, and Tank, his shadow soldiers were only around the level of B-rank hunters. Therefore, they will be defeated 3 or 4 times before taking down a high orc. Given that Kargalgan's army outnumbered his 3 times, he needed to take out other orcs as much as possible. Suddenly, Kargalgan cast a spell, Hymn of the Fire Dragon, which struck Jinwoo's shadow army, causing damage. Kargalgan taunted Jinwoo, saying not to be arrogant, as his little puppets did all the work. Jinwoo responded that his shadows could regenerate as long as he had mana. Kargalgan countered that it didn't matter if they regenerated because he would soon run out of mana, considering how quickly his orcs could kill Jinwoo's shadow soldiers. Jinwoo then charged, declaring, "You're going to die before that happens." Kargalgan used a magic spell, Hymn of Protection, which blocked Jinwoo's attack with a shield. He remarked that it was a waste of time since his soldiers were steadily decreasing in number. Jinwoo asked Kargalgan if he was sure of what he was saying, as he also had strong shadows. Kargalgan insisted that he needed to finish off Jinwoo's soldiers in one blow and cast him of blazing fire, unleashing massive explosions. As Jinwoo witnessed this, he realized that this boss was stronger than both Vulcan and Metis. While Metis could control thousands of undead soldiers, he had weak defenses. On the other hand, Kargalgan had exceptional defense and sorcery. Jinwoo thought he was also outnumbered by the many high orcs he had to face in hand-to-hand combat. However, he considered that this wasn't like a job change quest. He could use potions to replenish his mana whenever he wanted. Jinwoo stated that he didn't want to drink too many, so he would end the battle quickly, adding that it would be quite a spectacle. Kargalgan was taken aback by what he heard. Jinwoo declared he would show him the true power of a necromancer as he drank from a vial and uttered the word "arise." Jinwoo summoned Kargalgan's high orcs to become his shadows, shocking Kargalgan as he witnessed his warriors become undead. Jinwoo remarked that some of Kargalgan's high orcs were still alive, but soon they would also become shadows, ultimately like Kargalgan also, pointing at him. The chapter ended with Kargalgan still in disbelief at what he saw. Chapter 74 opens with Kargalgan still unable to believe what he has witnessed. His own warriors have been transformed into shadows by Jinwoo. This leads to an intense battle between the Shadow High Orcs and the High Orcs. As Kargalgan observes the chaos, he reflects on how they ended up in this situation and why, upon waking in the dungeon, they have been hearing only one command: to kill the humans, as if someone is controlling them. Kargalgan has ordered his generals to join the fray. One general charges at Iron, who swiftly deflects a slash with his axe. Using the same motion, Iron redirects the guard's sword downward and headbutts him, shattering his armor. This creates an opening for Iron, who finishes the guard with a powerful strike to the head with his axe. Meanwhile, two guards assault Igris. One guard leaps from above, which Igris intercepts, while the other guard attempts to flank him. However, Igris easily deflects the attack and uses the guard's momentum to dodge another strike. As he flips in the air, he draws a sword from his back and thrusts it into one guard. The remaining guard lunges again, but Igris effortlessly parries the strike and counters with such force that he overwhelms his opponent. Iron, in the meantime, sends another guard flying with a swing of his axe, which lands near Tank, who finishes it off with his massive claws. After their display of teamwork, Tank and Iron exchange thumbs-up gestures. Jinwoo smiles as he sees his generals starting to gain the upper hand. However, he worries that if he doesn't quickly replenish his mana with potions, his soldiers might vanish in an instant. While Kargalgan continues to ponder how he ended up in this predicament, other hunters realize they also need to assist in the battle. Suddenly, Kargalgan unleashes 3 spells simultaneously: Hymn of Agony, Hymn of High Fever, and Hymn of Blindness, which nearly decimate the hunters. He declares that the audience must not disrupt the performance. He then directs 3 spells at Jinwoo: Hymn of Slumber, Lethargy, and Blindness, asserting, "I shall shut that arrogant mouth of yours." To Kargalgan's shock, the spells had no effect on Jinwoo, who was immune to all curses. Jinwoo replied, "Don't you remember what I said? You're a terrible matchup for me." He dismissed the spells with a flick of his hand using his longevity skill, rendering him immune to all diseases, poisonous substances, and any other abnormalities. After this, Jinwoo spoke up, declaring that he would destroy Kargalgan's shield. He ordered his Shadow Mage to unleash a fireball at Kargalgan, using the Orb of Avarice to double its power. The fireball shattered Kargalgan's shield and engulfed him in flames, causing him to scream in agony. Meanwhile, Hunter Cha had reached the boss lair and was stunned by what he saw: summoned beasts fighting against the High Orcs. He noted that a mage-type hunter could typically summon only 1 or 2 beasts at most, leaving him questioning what was happening. Hae-In approached a member of the strike squad to inquire about the situation, but they admitted they also could not comprehend what was occurring. The scene shifted back to Kargalgan, who was furious. In a fit of rage, he cast 4 spells simultaneously: the Hymn of Rage, Reinforcement, Giant, and Combustion. Suddenly, he grew to the size of a giant. Hae-In, witnessing this transformation, warned everyone that they needed to leave immediately. Kargalgan crushed a shadow underfoot in an instant. As Jinwoo observed him, he recalled his bad experience with giants, most likely related to his encounter in Season 1 during the Double Dungeon. Kargalgan shouted at Jinwoo to stop being arrogant, insisting that he was now going to take things seriously. He generated a massive fireball and unleashed a powerful breath of fire toward Jinwoo. However, to Kargalgan's surprise, Jinwoo easily dodged the attack, leaving him astonished. In a swift motion, Jinwoo stabbed Kargalgan in the eye with a dagger, commenting that Kargalgan had only made himself an easier target by increasing in size. The chapter concluded with Jinwoo unleashing multiple slashes across Kargalgan's body. Before we wrap up this arc, if you enjoyed the video, please take a moment to subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Thank you. Chapter 75 began with Hunter Woo Jin-Chul and the surveillance team arriving at the boss lair. They were shocked by what they saw and questioned what was happening. Hae-In spoke up, explaining that the beasts they are seeing were summoned by a hunter standing before them. Meanwhile, Jinwoo continued to slash at Kargalgan with his dagger, but realized he couldn't inflict fatal damage on such a large opponent. He decided to switch tactics, hiding his dagger and clenching his fist. With a powerful punch, he struck Kargalgan's face, knocking him down. Woo Jin-Chul recognized the hunter and wondered if it was Sung Jinwoo. Hunter Cha overheard him and thought it remarkable that not only Guildmaster Choi, but also Woo Jin-Chul, the manager of the surveillance team, recognized Jinwoo. Jin-Chul mentioned they had entered the dungeon to assist the strike squad after detecting mana waves from the gate, but it seemed their help wasn't needed as Jinwoo was clearing an A-rank dungeon all by himself. Jin-Chul, seeing Jinwoo in battle for the first time, realized just how strong he was. There was no doubt he was one of the best fighter-type hunters, capable of using summoning magic. He wondered how many beasts Jinwoo could control. These questions swirled in his mind. Hunter Cha couldn't help but ask Jin-Chul who Jinwoo really was, and if he knew him. Jin-Chul replied, "Just a little bit." The scene shifted back to the fight between Jinwoo and Kargalgan, where Kargalgan lay defeated, unable to rise. Jinwoo stood before him, declaring that now that his guards were gone, Kargalgan had lost any chance of winning. Kargalgan made one final attempt to argue that it was impossible for Jinwoo to defeat him. After that, Kargalgan stabbed by his own guards, which ultimately led to his demise. Following this, a notification appeared in Jinwoo's system indicating that he had defeated the dungeon boss and leveled up twice. His shadow soldiers handled the remaining orcs. Jinwoo considered collecting his rewards, but suddenly remembered that the dungeon belonged to the Hunters Guild. It would be too greedy to take the boss loot. Deciding against claiming it, he opted to extract his shadows instead. Using the command Arise, he summoned Kargalgan as his new shadow. A powerful roar echoed through the lair as a dark shadow emerged. The members of the strike squad, along with Hae-In and Jin-Chul, were astonished by what they witnessed. They watched in awe as Jinwoo successfully extracted Kargalgan. Noticing that Kargalgan now appeared calm, Jinwoo realized that his current shadow army included ranks of Standard, Elite, and Knight, with Kargalgan being upgraded to an Elite Knight. Jinwoo pondered what to name him. Although he couldn't recall a fitting name, he settled on Tusk. With the extraction of several high orcs, he needed to return the other soldiers to the world of nothingness. Woo Jin-Chul approached and called out to Sung Jinwoo. Startled, Jinwoo turned to see him and realized Hunter Cha Hae-In was also present, having not noticed their arrival earlier. In that moment, he felt uncertain about what to do. Suddenly, Woo Jin-Chul and the surveillance team moved in to cover Jinwoo, stating that the Hunters Association needed to protect his identity. This meant they couldn't disclose what had happened in the dungeon to the public. They would explain the confidentiality clause once they exited through the gate, reiterating that no one could share the details of what had occurred there. Jin-Chul whispered to Jinwoo that they would escort him outside, with one team member suggesting this was the best way to avoid conflict. Jin-Chul further explained that Jinwoo had fought an army of beasts in an A-rank dungeon in front of the largest and wealthiest guild in South Korea. His strength surpassed that of an S-rank hunter, and if anyone had questions, they could inquire directly with the association. They needed to exit the dungeon. Just then, a voice called out, "Wait!" It was Ki-hoon, accompanied by another hunter. He told Jinwoo that they had all witnessed his incredible strength and understood that his identity needed to remain a secret. He also said he wouldn't question why Jinwoo had volunteered as a porter, acknowledging that Jinwoo had saved them all. The entire strike squad bowed and thanked him. Jinwoo returned a will to the female healer who had given it to him, saying that since nothing bad had happened to her, it was better for her to give it to his family. The female healer glanced at him and suddenly remembered that she had given him something before they faced the boss. As Jinwoo prepared to leave, Hae-In seemed ready to speak but was interrupted as Jinwoo and the surveillance team departed. The chapter concluded with a female mage asking Hae-In why she was carrying a pickaxe. Flustered, Hae-In stumbled over her words, wondering if Jinwoo thought she was strange, causing her to blush. The female mage, curious, asked who Hae-In was referring to, but Hae-In simply bowed her head and replied, "Never mind." This marks the end of the Hunters Guild arc. The next arc, titled Return to Demon Castle arc, will start from Chapter 76 to Chapter 89 as Jinwoo returns to the Demon Castle to obtain the final ingredient for the Holy Water of Life. Along the way, he meets Esselradairu, a friendly demon noble who offers to guide him to Baron, the Demon King, and the final boss of the castle.